My dad chose his new wife's kids over me, calling them the family that counts. I showed him exactly what that choice cost. I was 16 when my dad married Claudia, a woman with 3 kids from 2 different fathers. She had twin daughters, Sophia and Sienna, who were 14, and a son, Derek, who was 12. My mom had died from cancer when I was 11, and for 5 years, it had been just me and dad rebuilding our lives. He'd worked as an engineer at a defense contractor, making good money, and we'd been close. He helped me with homework, came to my baseball games, talked about colleges I might attend. Then Claudia appeared at his company's holiday party, and everything changed within 6 months. The wedding happened fast, and suddenly, our 3-bedroom house had 5 people living in it. Dad gave up his home office so the twins could have their own room. I kept my bedroom, but Derek moved into what had been our guest room. Claudia immediately started rearranging everything, replacing mom's furniture with her own stuff, repainting walls, changing the kitchen layout. Dad let her do whatever she wanted, saying it was her home now too, and she should feel comfortable. I watched my mother's touches disappear room by room. The first major incident happened 3 weeks after the wedding. I'd been saving money from my summer landscaping job to buy a new laptop for school. I had $800 in cash in my desk drawer, money I'd earned over 2 months of hard work in the heat. One afternoon I came home and found the money gone. I asked Dad about it, and he said Claudia had borrowed it to buy school clothes for the twins because they needed to fit in at their new school. He promised to pay me back from his next paycheck. I was furious, but he said family helps family, and I needed to be more generous with my new siblings. 2 weeks later, when I asked about repayment, Dad said the money had already been spent on family expenses, and I should consider it my contribution to the household. Claudia was standing right there and smiled, saying I should be grateful they were housing and feeding me. Dad didn't correct her. He just changed the subject and walked away. That's when I started to understand how things were going to be. The twins were demanding from day one. They wanted new phones, designer clothes, expensive makeup, constant trips to the mall. Dad bought them everything they asked for, saying he wanted them to feel welcomed. When I pointed out that I'd been wearing the same clothes for 2 years and my phone was 3 generations old, Dad said I was being selfish and jealous. Claudia started making comments about how I was too old to need coddling, that 16-year-olds should be independent. Derek was quieter but just as entitled, expecting Dad to drive him everywhere and buy him the latest gaming equipment. Within 3 months, Dad had spent thousands on his new stepkids while I got nothing. My birthday came 4 months after the wedding, and Dad forgot completely. He took the whole family to an expensive restaurant for Sophia's birthday 2 weeks later and gave her a $500 shopping spree. When I asked why he'd forgotten mine, he said he'd been busy adjusting to the new family dynamics, and I should understand. Claudia laughed and said 16-year-olds don't need parties anyway. Christmas that year was brutal. The twins each got laptops, new phones, expensive jewelry, designer clothes, and gift cards totaling hundreds of dollars. Derek got a new gaming console, virtual reality headset, and a mountain bike. I got a $25 gift card to a bookstore. Dad noticed my face when I opened it and said quietly that I should be grateful for what I got, that Claudia's kids had been through a lot with their fathers leaving and needed extra support. I went to my room and didn't come out for the rest of the day. That night I heard Claudia telling Dad that I was ungrateful and spoiled, that her kids were the real family now and he needed to prioritize them. I heard Dad agree with her. He actually said I'd had him to myself for 5 years and it was time to focus on the children who really needed him. Those words, children who really needed him, burned into my memory. I realized then that I'd been replaced in my own father's life by kids he'd known less than a year. School became my escape. I threw myself into academics and baseball, staying away from home as much as possible. I was a junior with good grades and strong athletic performance, already thinking about college scholarships. My guidance counselor, Mr. Brennan, noticed I was stressed and asked what was going on. I didn't tell him everything, just said family stuff was complicated. He suggested I look into scholarships and financial aid early since college was expensive. I started researching that week, printing applications and requirements at the school library. Dad had always promised to help pay for college, had even opened a college fund for me when Mom was alive. I knew there was money in that account because Mom had contributed to it regularly before she got sick. I figured that was my safety net even if Dad was spending everything else on his new family. I was wrong about that too. In January of my junior year, I needed to submit financial information for an early scholarship application. I asked Dad for access to the college fund statements to prove we had educational savings. He got defensive immediately, saying I didn't need to worry about that right now. I pressed him, and he finally admitted that he'd closed the account and used the money for household expenses after marrying Claudia. There had been $23,000 in that fund, money my mother had saved specifically for my education. Dad had spent it on his new family in less than 6 months. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I asked him how he could do that, how he could spend Mom's money on kids he barely knew. Dad's face went red, and what he said made my blood boil. Full story is linked below or on my channel.